Just like in some of my other videos where I've already looked at the quarterbacks in the SEC and the Big Ten, today we're going to take a look at the ACC conference, go through each team's starting quarterbacks, I'll give my thoughts, and we will rank them 1 through 14. So let's just get started. Duke has had some notable names at quarterback with guys such as Anthony Boone, Daniel Jones, Quentin Harris, and most recently Chase Bryce, but their starter for 2021 is not very well known at all. His name is Gunnar Holmberg. He had a terrific career and chose to take his talents to the Duke Blue Devils over the likes of Wake Forest and a couple other schools. According to 24/7 Sports, Holmberg was a 3-star recruit, the number 23 pro-style quarterback, and the 557th best player in the class of 2018. His uncle played in the NFL, so football obviously ran in his blood. He played in one game in 2018, as he would play against Temple in the Independence Bowl. In 2019, he did not see any game action after he would suffer a season-ending knee injury, and in 2020, he was the backup to Chase Bryce. He doesn't have a ton of experience under his belt, and Duke isn't exactly the biggest brand in football, so it's hard to say that Holmberg is not the last player on this list, but I'm very excited to see what he can do. When you think of Syracuse quarterbacks, guys like Donovan McNabb, Ryan Nassib, and most recently Eric Dungey, all are great orange quarterbacks. Unfortunately, the guy who was supposed to be the next big thing has not panned out so far. His name is Tommy DeVito, and he will likely be the starter going into 2021. He's in a quarterback battle with Mississippi State transfer Garrett Schrader, but as of right now, it looks like DeVito will probably win the job. DeVito was a 4-star recruit coming out of high school and chose to take his talents to Dino Babers over Rutgers and Boston College. According to 24/7 Sports, DeVito was a 4-star recruit, the number 13 pro-style quarterback, and the 327th best player in the class of 2017. He would redshirt in 2017 before he would be a backup to Eric Dungey in 2018. Syracuse was coming off a great season, and DeVito would start 11 games in 2019 as he'd throw for 2,300 yards and 19 touchdowns. Unfortunately, he did not lead Syracuse to a lot of wins, which made people pretty skeptical. Going into 2020, he'd start his first 4 games before he'd have a season-ending injury against Duke. He's the definition of an average quarterback, but at a school like Syracuse, it's just not going to cut it. And for now, he's number 13 on the list, but hopefully he can put all his potential together and become a great quarterback. At number 12, we have a guy who could easily move up on the list, and that is Braxton Burmeister. He was a 4-star recruit coming out of the state of California, and his dad was a great player for North Carolina. According to 24/7 Sports, Burmeister was a 4-star recruit, the number 10 dual-threat quarterback, and the 305th best player in the class of 2017. He originally took his talents to Oregon, where he would start 5 games in 2017, and after the 2018 season, he decided to enter the transfer portal, likely due to Justin Herbert. He settled on Virginia Tech, but was unable to play in 2019 because his waiver was denied. In 2020, he went 3-1 as the Hokies starter, and he passed for 687 yards and combined for 4 scores. So far, he does not have a ton of experience, but I think he's a guy who could move up on the list, and he is at number 12. At number 11, we get to another guy with a year of starting experience, and that is Jeff Sims from Georgia Tech. He was a big-time recruit coming out of the state of Florida, and originally chose to take his talents to Florida State. He would later flip to Jeff Collins in the Yellow Jackets, and would become the main quarterback for his system. According to 24/7 Sports, Sims was a 4-star recruit, the number 10 dual-threat quarterback, and the 223rd best player in the class of 2020. He would win the starting job as a freshman, and he'd throw for 1,881 yards, 13 touchdowns, and a very concerning 13 interceptions. It is a new system, he was young, it was a weird year, and he showed a lot of flash, so Jeff Sims can definitely move up on the list, but as of right now, he's at number 11, but he has an extremely high ceiling. At number 10, we have NC State quarterback Devin Leary. Growing up in New Jersey, Leary became a huge name on the recruiting scene and is actually the state of New Jersey's all-time leader in passing yards and touchdowns. Because of that, he was named a 4-star recruit and decided to take his talents to NC State. According to 24/7 Sports, Leary was a 4-star recruit, the number 16 pro-style quarterback, and the 372nd best player in the class of 2018. In 2019, he would start 8 games and pass for 1,219 yards and 8 touchdowns. Going into 2020, he would beat out Bailey Hartman for the starting job, and had a pretty promising start to his 2020 campaign. He threw for a total of 890 yards and 8 touchdowns before he would go down with a season-ending injury. Leary has all the potential in the world, and as an upperclassman, he should be a really good player, but he needs to stay healthy and put it all together before he can move up on this list. Bryce Perkins helped put Virginia football back on the map, but the guy who is taking over could be even better. His name is Brennan Armstrong, and he is at number 9 on our list. Coming out of high school, Armstrong was wanted on the recruiting scene, but he decided to take his talents to Virginia. According to 24/7 Sports, Armstrong was a 3-star recruit, the number 20 dual-threat quarterback, and the 619th best player in the class of 2018. He would be behind Perkins for 2 years before he would become the starter in 2020. He looked really good, as he actually tied in the FBS for the most single-season games with 200-plus yards and 45-plus yards rushing. He helped them upset North Carolina, and in 2020, he'd passed for over 2,000 yards and 18 touchdowns, while also rushing for 552 yards and 5 scores, and because of that, he was a Pro Football Focus All-ACC honorable mention. He could be in for a huge 2021 campaign, and I'm excited to see what Armstrong can do next. At number 8, we have Sam Hartman from Wake Forest. Coming out of the same high school that Will Grier went to, Hartman was one of the best players in his county and was going to play high major college football. According to 24/7 Sports, Hartman was a 3-star recruit, the number 32 pro-style quarterback, and the 767th best player in the class of 2018. Going into Dave Clawson's system at Wake Forest, he would beat out Jamie Newman for the starting job, and was only one of 5 freshmen to start the season opener. He set numerous school records as a true freshman, and passed for over 2,000 yards and 16 touchdowns. In 2019, he would not play as much as Jamie Newman would become the starting quarterback, but in 2020, he would show out. He finished 28th in the country in passing yards, and has nearly 5,000 yards and 30 touchdowns to his name. Wake Forest is not the sexiest program in college football, but Hartman is a good quarterback and could move up on this list because of his experience and his skill set. At number 7, we go over to Louisville and talk about their quarterback, Michael Cunningham. Some people refer to him as Malik, but I really don't even know what it is, and for the sake of this video, I'm just going to call him Michael. Cunningham grew up in the state of Alabama and became a big-time name on the recruiting scene. According to 24/7 Sports, Cunningham was a 3-star recruit, the number 33 athlete, and the 501st best player in the class of 2017, but according to other sources, he was a 4-star recruit. He would redshirt in 2017 as Jawan Pass would start, but after he struggled, he would appear in 10 games in 2018, starting 3 of them. He'd have 5 touchdowns on the ground and 1 touchdown through the air. 2019, he'd have a pretty good season as he would pass for 2,000 yards and 22 touchdowns and became one of the more underrated quarterbacks in the country. There were a ton of huge expectations on Cunningham going into 2020 as Louisville was ranked and he was expected to be one of the top players in the ACC, but he would struggle a little bit. He did pass for 2,617 yards and 20 scores, but he threw 12 interceptions, which was somewhat concerning. The talent is there for Cunningham to become a star, and as an upperclassman with 2 years of starting experience, I expect him to be above average in the ACC, but he has the potential to be even better. Since we are at number 6 on this list, we are now getting into the tier of quarterbacks that I believe could all be elite. We have Florida State quarterback McKenzie Milton, who was one of the more inspiring stories in all of college football. Coming out of the Aloha State, McKenzie Milton was rated as a 3-star recruit, the number 90 athlete, and the 1,161st best player in the class of 2016. He'd played for 2 years under Scott Frost, as in 2016 he threw for nearly 2,000 yards and 10 touchdowns, but 2017 is when he would really break out. UCF would have an historic season, and he'd throw for over 4,000 yards and 37 touchdowns, and became one of the best quarterbacks in all of college football. In 2018, they were off to a hot start with Josh Heupel at the helm, but after throwing for nearly 3,000 yards and 25 touchdowns, he would suffer a horrific leg injury in the American Conference Championship game. Some said he would never play football again, but he would consistently rehab until he would get back to speed. Eventually, he would get cleared and enter his name into the transfer portal, as Dylan Gabriel had taken over as a starter for UCF. He chose to stay in the state of Florida, as he is now the starting quarterback for Florida State. From all sources, he is doing extremely well, and could be the quarterback that Florida State needs to take the next step in 2021. At number 5, we have my biggest sleeper quarterback in all of college football in Boston College's Phil Jurkovec. Coming out of the state of New Jersey, he grew up idolizing Notre Dame football, and by the time he became a borderline 5-star recruit, he decided to take his talents to the Fighting Irish. After sitting on the bench behind Ian Book, he decided to enter his name into the transfer portal and find a new home for 2020. He'd choose up-and-coming head coach Jeff Hafley, and he would go across the country to Chestnut Hill. According to 24/7 Sports, Jurkovec was a 4-star recruit, the number 4 dual-threat quarterback, and the 83rd best player in the class of 2018, but his stock had fallen a little bit, as at one point he was a 5-star. He'd have a great 2020 campaign, as he'd throw for 2,558 yards, 17 touchdowns, and only 5 picks, and he nearly led them to wins over North Carolina and Clemson. I made an entire video about his story and why he is the biggest sleeper quarterback in the country, so be sure to check that out, and don't be surprised if Jurkovec is a first-round pick in 2022. At number 4, we may have the most controversial pick on this list, as I have Pittsburgh quarterback Kenny Pickett. Pickett was a 3-star recruit, the number 33 pro-style quarterback, and the 738th best player in the class of 2017. At the time, my friend Max Brown was the starting quarterback for Pitt, but after he went down, Pickett would get a shot. He would make one start as a true freshman and would pass for 509 yards and 1 score, and they'd actually go to the ACC championship game where they would get humiliated by Clemson. In 2018, he'd start all 14 games, throwing for nearly 2,000 yards and 12 touchdowns, and had a couple of clutch moments. In 2019, he'd have his best season to date as he passed for over 3,000 yards and 13 touchdowns. He would come back as a senior in 2020, and despite the shortened year, he'd still pass for 2,500 yards and 13 touchdowns. To this point, his numbers have not been off the page by any means, and he has struggled with interceptions, but a guy with 4 years of starting experience, over 6,000 yards passing, and close to 40 touchdowns is hard to leave off this list, and he is a talented dude who has already likely reached his ceiling as a top 5 ACC QB. For 3, we have Miami quarterback D'Eriq King. Coming out of Manville, Texas, he was the starting quarterback over Kyle Trask and was seen as a huge football name from the very beginning. After originally committing to TCU, he would flip his commitment to Tom Herman at Houston, where he'd have a really solid couple of years. He became a dynamic player for the Houston Cougars, but after a tough start to the 2019 campaign, King would redshirt for the rest of the year and enter his name into the transfer portal. After some rumors he would go to Oklahoma, he would decide to settle on Miami, where he'd be an instant impact player. He would pass for 2,686 yards, 23 touchdowns, and only had 5 picks, while also rushing for over 500 yards and 4 touchdowns. He would get hurt in their bowl game, but he is expected to make a full recovery for 2021 and be the starter there. At number 2, one of the top high school football quarterbacks of all time, in DJ Uiagalelei. He went to one of the most prestigious high school football schools in the country, and because of his size, arm strength, and talent, he quickly became one of the hottest names on the recruiting trail. There were rumors he would go to other schools, but everyone knew he would take his talents to Clemson, and he was a 5-star recruit. He came in as the backup to Trevor Lawrence, but when he had a positive test, Uiagalelei was thrown in with the Sharks against Boston College and led them to a comeback. He was put on a national stage against Notre Dame last year, where he had one of the best passing performances in Clemson football history, but Notre Dame would take care of him in double overtime. DJ showed the kind of potential and flash that he had, and now that he is the starter going into 2021, many expect him to be a potential Heisman candidate, a first-round pick in 2023, and just another name to add to Clemson's storied quarterback history. Finally, we get to number 1 on this list, and while some will say DJ deserves to be number 1, I think without a doubt Sam Howell is number 1. Coming out of the state of North Carolina, Sam Howell had quickly blossomed into a big-time recruit. He originally decided to take his talents to Florida State, but when Mac Brown was hired for the Tar Heels, he was convinced to flip. He would start as a true freshman and would have a great first year at the helm. He almost led them to a win against Clemson and became one of the best young players in the country. In 2020, he finished top 5 in passing yards with 3,586 and top 10 in touchdowns with 30. He was one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the entire nation and showed that he is worthy of a top 5 pick in the 2022 NFL Draft. He is expected to be a legitimate Heisman contender in 2021. He's going to hopefully lead North Carolina to the college football playoff, and more than likely, he is going to be the best quarterback in North Carolina football history when it is all said and done. I absolutely love Sam Howell and cannot wait to see him in the NFL, and hopefully he can lead North Carolina to new heights. So yeah, in today's video, we ranked all 14 starting quarterbacks in the ACC, and let me know your thoughts. What did I get right? What did I get wrong? And what topic should I do next? Before you go, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you are new here, and check out all my other videos on the end screen, including my video about ranking SEC quarterback. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.